Vandehang Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalang Sri Gurung Vaishnavangscha Sri Rupang Sagra Jatang Sahagana Raguna Tanvitang Tang Sajivam Sadvaitang Savadhutang Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devang Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanvitangscha Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Rakshama Krishna 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 Pahimam Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshama Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahimam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasa Adigor Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Haraye Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopala Govinda Rama Sri Madhusudana Om Apavitra Pavitro Va Sarva Avastang Gatopi Va StMoritz Pundarika Akshang Sabaya Abhyantara Shuchi Sri Vishnu Sri Vishnu Sri Vishnu Om Jnana Timbarandhasya Jnana Anjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitan Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukang Karoti Vachalang Pangam Langhayate Giring Yat Kripa Tamahang Vande Sri Gurung Dina Taranam Yat Kripa tamahang vande parama ananda madhavam trinadapi sunichena torad iva sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari hare nama hare nama hare nama eva kevalam kalo nastyeva 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 gatir anyata om namo bhagavate vasudevaya om namo bhagavate vasudevaya om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Today we have scene number 15. How a devotee explains the phrase Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya. Prabhupada now writes, so in this way, the personified Vedas said, my dear Lord Krishna, when a living entity, by your grace only, comes to the right conclusion about your exalted transcendental position, at that time he or she no longer bothers with the different theories manufactured by mental speculators or so-called philosophers. Prabhupada now comments, this is a reference to the speculative theories of Gautama, Kanada, Patanjali, and the atheist Kapila, who is also known as Nir Ishwara. There are actually two Kapilas. One Kapila, the son of Kardama Muni, is an incarnation of God, and the other is an atheist of the modern age. The atheist Kapila is often misrepresented to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead who appeared as the son of Kardama Muni during the time of Swayambhuva Manu. However, the actual Lord Kapila, or incarnation of Godhead, appeared long, long ago. The modern age is the age of Vaivasvata Manu, whereas Kapila Dev appeared during the time of Swayambhuva Manu. So, just to give some context, there are 14 Manus in each day of Brahma. So, when Prabhupada says the modern age is the age of Vaivasvata Manu, he is the 7th Manu, and Swayambhuva Manu is the first Manu. And each Manu lives between 71 to 72 Divya Yugas. What's a Divya Yuga? It's the 4 ages taken together. So you calculate that, and then there are 7 Manus in between. Let's continue. According to Mayavadi philosophy, this manifest world, or the material world, is mithya, or maya, false. The Mayavadi's preaching principle is Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya. According to the Mayavadis, only the Brahman effulgence is truth, whereas the cosmic manifestation is illusory or false. But according to Vaishnava philosophy, this cosmic manifestation is caused by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says at the end of chapter 10, Ata va bahunaitena king gyatena tavarjuna vishtabhyaham idang kritsnam ekangshena stato jagat. But what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? For with a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. So, this verse comes at the end of chapter 10, and chapter 10 is entitled Vibhuti Yoga. And in that chapter, Krishna details 81 vibhutis. A vibhuti is a specific opulence in the material world that represents Krishna. So after listing those 81 vibhutis, this verse comes in where Krishna says, yes, what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? For with a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. So Prabhupada now continues. So Krishna enters within this material world by one of his plenary or full portions. And this is how the creation takes place. From the Vedas also we can understand that this asat or temporary cosmic manifestation is also an emanation from the supreme sat or truth or fact. From the Vedanta Sutra also it is understood that everything has emanated from the supreme Brahman. As such, Vaishnavas do not take this cosmic manifestation to be false. For the Vaishnava philosopher sees everything in this material world in relationship with the Supreme Lord. This conception of the material world is very nicely explained by Srila Rupa Goswami, the direct disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he has composed the following verse. Prapanchakataya buddhya hari sambandhi vastuna mumukshubi parityago vairagyam falgu kathyate. Rupa Goswami says, renunciation of this material world as illusory or false without knowledge that the material world is also the manifestation of the Supreme Lord is of no practical value. The Vaishnavas, however, are free of attachment to this world because generally the material world is accepted as an object of sense gratification. Vaishnavas are not in favor of sense gratification. Therefore, they are not attached to material activities. The Vaishnava accepts this material world according to the regulative principles of the Vedic injunctions. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the original cause of everything, the Vaishnava sees everything in relationship with Krishna, even in this material world. And by such advanced knowledge, everything becomes spiritualized. In other words, everything in the material world is already spiritual, but due to our lack of knowledge, we see things as material. And so, the personified Vedas presented the example that those who are seeking after gold do not reject gold earrings, gold bangles, or anything else made of gold simply because they are shaped differently from the original gold. All living entities are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, which is stated in chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita. Mamai vangsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. And thus, in quality, one with God. But they are now differently shaped throughout 8,400,000 species of life, just like many different ornaments which have been manufactured from the same source of gold. So just as one is interested in gold accepts all the differently shaped gold ornaments, so the Vaishnava, knowing well that all living entities are of the same quality as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, accepts all living entities as eternal servants of God. This was established when Sanatana Goswami questioned Lord Chaitanya as to his real identity, K. Ami. And Lord Chaitanya replied by saying, Jivera Krishnera Jivera Krishnera Nityadas. So Lord Chaitanya pointed out that the constitutional position of the Jiva is Krishna Das, the eternal servant of Krishna. The Vaishnava then simply has ample opportunity to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by reclaiming these conditioned, misled living entities, training them in Krishna consciousness, and leading them back home, back to Godhead. The fact is that the minds of the living entities are now agitated by the three material qualities: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And the living entities are therefore transmigrating as if in dreams from one body to another. I'd like to point out that this concept of the dream is directly mentioned in the statements of the Bhagavatam, especially in the 11th canto. Many statements are there in Krishna's instructions to Uddhava, where Krishna directly states that material existence is simply a dream. But there are other such statements throughout the Bhagavatam. Therefore, the living entities transmigrate as if in dreams from one body to another. And when their consciousness is changed into Krishna consciousness, however, immediately they fix Krishna within their hearts, and thus their path for liberation becomes clear. In all the Vedas, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities are stated to be of the same quality, Chaitanya, or spiritual. And this is also confirmed in the Padma Purana, wherein it is said that there are two kinds of spiritual entities. One is called the Jiva, and the other is called the Supreme Lord. Beginning from Lord Brahma down to the ant, all living entities are Jivas, whereas Lord Krishna is the supreme four-handed Vishnu or Janardhan. And I will point out that in between Jiva and Vishnu there is Shiva, as has been mentioned many times throughout these classes. The Shiva Tattva is a unique category. Lord Shiva is not an ordinary Jiva or living entity, and Lord Shiva is not Vishnu or the Supreme God. He is in between. Prabhupada continues. Actually, the word Atma should be applied only to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But because the living entities are Krishna's parts and parcels, sometimes the word Atma is applied to them also. The living entities are therefore called Jiva Atma, and the Supreme Lord is called Param Atma. Both the Param Atma and Jiva Atma are within this material world, and therefore this material world has a purpose other than sense gratification. Therefore, the conception of a life of sense gratification is Maya, or illusion. But the conception of service by the Jiva Atma to the Paramatma, even in this material world, is not at all illusory or Maya. A Krishna conscious person is fully aware of this fact, and thus the devotee does not take this material world to be false, but acts in the reality of transcendental service. The devotee therefore sees everything in this material world as an opportunity to serve Lord Krishna. The devotee does not reject anything as material, but dovetails everything in the service of Lord Krishna. Thus, a devotee is always in the transcendental position, and everything that the devotee uses becomes spiritually purified by being used in the service of Lord Krishna. This concept is explained as Yukta Vairagya. There are two kinds of renunciation or Vairagya. One is called false Vairagya, and one is called real Vairagya. Vairagya means detachment or renunciation. The non-devotee or the Mayavadi, his form of renunciation is called false because it is not the real sense of renunciation. The real sense of renunciation is stated here in this section, especially this last sentence. Everything that the devotee uses becomes spiritually purified by being used in the service of Lord Krishna. So the Mayavadi, he thinks everything is Maya. The Mayavadi thinks everything is illusion. Therefore, the Mayavadi does not see any use or purpose with this material world. Whereas the devotee understands that yes, the material world is a temporary manifestation of the eternal energy known as the material energy. It's one of Krishna's energies. So the energy is eternal. But the manifestation of the energy, that's illusion. That's temporary. But the energy itself, the material energy itself, is eternal. It's one of Krishna's energies. But the various manifestations, those are temporary. In the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it was clearly stated by Krishna the difference between matter and spirit. In one of those early verses in chapter 2, matter was defined as something having temporary existence, and spirit is said to be eternal existence. So that is the difference. Something which has temporary existence, like our own bodies, that is asat. But sat, truth, is that which is eternal. And all of Krishna's energies are eternal. So now we continue with Prabhupada's translation of this section. Prabhupada writes, Sridhar Swami has composed a nice verse in this regard. I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is always manifest as reality, even within this material world, which is considered by some to be false. Now Prabhupada goes further. The conception of the falsity of this material world is due to lack of knowledge. That a person advanced in Krishna consciousness sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything. This is actually realization of the Vedic aphorism, Sarva Kalvidang Brahma. Everything is Brahman. And I, Nirantara Das, has come up with a take on this, Sarva Kalvidam Krishna. That actually everything is a manifestation of Krishna's energy. So, let us now, thank you very much, let us do the prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. Namaste Narasimhaya Prahlad Aklada Dayane Hiranya Kashipura Vakshaha Shilatanka Nakalaye Ito Nrsinga Parato Nrsimho Yato Yato Yamitato Nrsimha Bahi Nrsimho Hridaye Nrsimho Nrsimham Ading Sharanang Prapajye Namaste Narasimhaya Nrsimhamading Sharanang Prapadye Tava Karakamala Varenakam Adbhuta Sringam Dalita Hiranya Kashipu Tanubringam Keshavadrita Narahadi Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Keshavadrita Nrsimha Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Tat Sat.